that old VHS. We're diving deep in cheesy flicks. Yeah, we're on a vintage quest. Low reviews but high on laughs. Let's give these films a cheer. The cult classics, flops and nuts. There are topics this year. We're the Ejectables, rolling back the years, celebrating movies that no one else cheers. From bad hair juice to epic fails, we say it's all good. We're the Ejectables, yeah, we're misunderstood.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ejectables. It's the show where co-hosts and movie enthusiasts Bill, Joe, and Ian join forces to celebrate movies that we feel have been unjustly panned by the critics or sadly neglected or forgotten by the audiences. And today our guest co-host is Brian. Brian, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks very much. It's nice to be here. And I live in Portland, and I'm a journalist, and I write about a combination of architecture and visual art and movies. Maybe more architecture than anything else these days, but I got my start writing about movies, and I'm someone who really considers movies probably my first love more than architecture, even though that's what I write about most today. And I guess you could say an amateur filmmaker. I make short films as well, and I've been doing that for a lot of years. And so I'm always up for a movie discussion.
Awesome.
Nice. You're in the right place. Well, thank you for coming. So, do we want to get into how you two know each other, or do you want to tell us?
We met on a street corner. So
that was your meet cute?
Yeah, it was my meet cute. Brian and his wonderful girlfriend?
Partner, I guess you could say.
Partner knows my girlfriend, and they're two of the best people I know in Portland. So
very cool. Well, thank you for joining us. Shall we? Do you want to jump right into it? What do you guys think?
Sure. Let's talk about Brian's pick first.
Yeah, Brian, what'd you pick?
I picked the movie Lost Highway from 1997 by David Lynch, and it might be counterintuitive to say that a David Lynch film is something that was unfavorably received by the critics or is underrated, but I remember this movie's advertising, even its official poster, having a quote that said "2 thumbs down" from Siskel and Ebert. And I don't really hear about this movie when people are talking about the greatest David Lynch work. They might talk about Twin Peaks. They might talk about Mulholland Drive, which was a year or two named one of the 10 best movies of all time by the Sight and Sound International Critics Poll. Some people still love his first film, Eraserhead, kind of a cult classic. And maybe the best of all might be Blue Velvet from 1986, which is kind of a masterpiece, I think. And so Lost Highway is one that's kind of slipped in there in the late 90s between Twin Peaks and Mulholland Drive, maybe his two most celebrated works. And I had a really memorable time seeing it in the theater for the first time. In fact, David Lynch was in the audience when I saw it. It was in New York City at what was called the American Museum of the Moving Image, and it was a preview screening of the film. And he was there to introduce the film and to take audience questions afterward. And I remember my partner and I got like a book or something signed. There was like a receiving line where you could talk to David Lynch and get him to sign something. And so, I exchanged like a couple of words with him after the screening. But he famously doesn't really shed any light on what the hell his movies mean. And that's their best known quality, is that you can't really figure them out. I think Twin Peaks was, the original Twin Peaks was a little more straightforward than most, in that there was a murder and eventually there was a killer found. But Lost Highway is a real head scratcher, you might say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it's not just me. I thought that was just me. I'm like, am I not smart? I mean, I'm not, but I thought even more so with this. But
yeah. Well, I got to interview David Lynch myself as a writer in 2001, and I always remember something he said, that he said that some people only like to go for a drive where they know the destination and they know the route they're taking, and that some people like getting lost. They like going for a drive and not knowing where they're going to wind up. And really, that's kind of who his movies were for. And I think of his films as a kind of antidote. Like I began my career more specifically trying to be a film critic, trying to be a movie reviewer, and I just found it kind of soul sucking in a way. I eventually had to get out of reviewing movies because I just felt like, I think it's been said that there are only like 20 different plots or something, and it just started to feel like I was just seeing retread after retread, or it felt like every movie I watched, I just kind of knew where it was going. And so I think David Lynch's films, sort of teach me or teach us to kind of let go and don't worry about figuring out everything. I think it's actually kind of a case where some of my favorite movies are ones where there's like an ambiguous ending, or there's something that you don't quite understand. Like if you don't understand something, you keep thinking about it and keep pondering about it. There's some kind of complexity and mystery to it. And I think Lost Highway is kind of, there are aspects of it that are familiar. It's in some ways you might say like a kind of contemporary take on a film noir, and the Patricia Arquette character, the kind of double role she plays, one brunette and one blonde, or possibly the same person. We don't quite know. It's in some ways like a kind of classic femme fatale, even though there are aspects of this movie that make pretty much no sense at all. Like one character played Bill Pullman seems to kind of transmogrify into another character played by Balthazar Getty. Like, it's still a kind of film noir to me, in that it's about a murder and a little bit of a mystery, and there's a femme fatale who kind of sets it all in motion.
Ian, what did you think, Ian?
I saw this at the theater when it came out 4,000 years ago, and I didn't bring a lot. I mean, I remember just being confused. I'm like, oh, that was just kind of creepy. And as you know, I like some creepy movies, but his lack of answers, like you said, I didn't find that fully satisfying. Now, remembering that I didn't fully appreciate it back then, going in to watch it this time, I had low expectations and I enjoyed it. It is beautiful to look at. I would say it's one of his more satisfying films, even though I have no idea what it's saying to me. But I loved its film noir vibe. It's stunning. Patricia Arquette is great. I love that speech that Robert, Loggia, says to the guy that he runs off the road. It's just, there's just so many. Do you want to show some photos, Bill?
Sure.
Or maybe we could show the clip.
The Robert Loggia. Yep. 1 second.
Yeah. It's a fun, kooky movie.
It is.
How'd you get inside my house?
There's something worth noting about that clip. Like if you had started a few seconds earlier, like the Robert Blake character says, "I'm at your house right now. Here, call me." And so he dials his own number and talks to Robert Blake simultaneously at his house and standing in front of him. And that character is really kind of the straw that stirs the drink in a certain respect. And so there's a total like unknowability. But I think, Bill, you had said to me in a message a few days ago that there's as dark as David Lynch films are, and as this film is, there's a kind of humor to it as well.
Yeah. I know someone connected to Twin Peaks, and he said that David Lynch was just batshit crazy, and that I think we're all being punked a little bit. I think we're all being punked, although I love The Elephant Man. I never saw this in the theater. I forgot how awesome Patricia Arquette was. I never thought I would see Bill Pullman in a David Lynch movie. Also, that was a sweet treat as well. Definitely out there. Better than Wild at Heart, I thought. What do you guys think?
It's like these twin narratives. Like you have the first kind of 1/3 or 1/2 of the movie, and Bill Pullman and his wife, played by Patricia Arquette, they start receiving these videotapes at their doorstep of someone filming inside their house and filming them while they're asleep. And what's really happening in that narrative is you see that he's starting to become more and more suspicious that Patricia Arquette is cheating on him. And then suddenly he's found to have supposedly murdered her. And you don't really see it coming because he doesn't seem like a violent character or anything. And then while he's in jail, he kind of turns into another person, played by Balthazar Getty, and nobody understands quite what's happened and why this other person is in the jail cell on death row. But then when it turns into this Balthazar Getty narrative, there's a continuation, of course, because there's another character played by Patricia Arquette, and he starts having a sexual relationship with her, and so it's like these two narratives are kind of like a reverse point of view of somebody becoming suspicious of his wife being cheating on him, and so it's like it's exploring infidelity in these two narratives, and it's kind of stewing in the jealousy and rage that go with that, but from these different points of view, and then at the end, like, all bets are off because it really becomes something even more unknowable or hard to discern or understand.
So we weren't supposed to understand how it became a different person in the prison, because I was like, did I miss something? I was trying not to look at my phone. So we didn't know, right?
No. Like, I don't think understanding what's going on is the point of David Lynch films.
Yeah.
When I got to do my interview with him back in 2001, I said, do you know everything that happened? Is there a clear thing that happened in all these films? And he said, yes. And I said, what if someone else has a different interpretation of what happened? Like, we're all just kind of guessing. And he said, that's great. And he kind of wants everybody to kind of form their own kind of hunch and opinion. And it's not about figuring out what happened. It's like tasting a dish where you don't recognize some of the ingredients, and you're just like, is this paprika? It's not like figuring out, like, the ambiguity is the point. And the fact that you might be still thinking about this movie in a couple of weeks is kind of the measure of success in a certain way. Like, I think you have to kind of let go as a viewer. Like, and if people are used to not watching this kind of film, like, it's obviously something different, and it takes some mental fortitude to sort of accept that you're not going to know. But the ambiguity is the point, I think.
It is no straight story. It's I think, and
True.
that's obviously, I think for both Bill and I, that's the one that we love most, because it is satisfying, because there's a beginning, middle, and end. But I do, like you said, I appreciate that it brings something else to the table. That's not, by the numbers. Oh, we know exactly what's going to happen next and how it's going to happen. So thank you.
Was this movie a big hit?
No. I think it's one of his least successful films, from both a commercial, box office return standpoint, and from a critical reception. I'm sure there are some critics who liked it, and I do think it has undergone a little bit of a reappraisal, that it has its supporters now, and and also I think, like, as David Lynch has become more and more kind of established in film history as a great director and an iconoclast, like, I think people are willing to kind of shrug off and understand that this film is like part of a canon of films, and that you don't just see it like as if it's a director we've never heard of. Like, it fits into, like, even if you don't understand Lost Highway, you can tell that it fits into the kind of catalog of his films, and it's exploring ideas, and it has a kind of tone that fits right in with his other movies, even if we agree that other films of his are more successful. Like, I think this film is of a kind of pairing with his next film that came 4 years later, Mulholland Drive, which is vastly more critically acclaimed. Like I said, there was every 10 years there's an international critics poll by Sight and Sound magazine from Britain, where they pull critics and directors from all over the world to vote on the top 10 greatest movies of all time. And for most of our lifetimes, the number one film has been Citizen Kane, and then it was Vertigo, and they really expanded the voting base this most recent time. And to everybody's shock, this Chantal Akerman film, Jeanne Dielman, was actually rated at number one. But what was equally surprising is there were two films from the last 10, 15 years that were in the top 10, and one of which was David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. And so that too is a kind of double narrative where it switches from one narrative to another. And it's a little bit more successful because the second narrative still involves like kind of the same characters, and it kind of makes you realize that the first narrative was a dream, kind of like, you know, Bobby Ewing on Dallas or something. And so Mulholland Drive almost feels like he kind of tried again to do a similar approach, like two narratives, and you know, you're kind of wondering how one narrative relates to the other, how the second half of the film relates to the first. And I think Mulholland Drive is more successful, and it is more discernible. Like you are with Mulholland Drive more able to go, oh, okay, I get it. Like the first portion of the movie was kind of a dream that the character in the second half of the movie experiences. And Lost Highway is not so tidy. Like we can't necessarily say that the character Balthasar Getty is in the second half of the film is just having a dream where he was Bill Pullman. Like it's not that clean and tidy. It's a little bit more difficult to figure out, maybe for better or worse, or for better and worse.
Yeah.
I know you have a David Lynch story. I just read something that David Lynch and the musician Tom Wolfe went to NYU together. I think they were perhaps roommates. And David Lynch said that Tom Wolfe was a weird guy.
Well, they went to the American Film.
Oh, did they go to AFI? I thought they went to NYU.
No, David Lynch went to AFI.
Oh, yeah, it's so funny because he was a weird guy. So David Lynch is feeling weird.
Is there more of a story that you can share with us that Bill's alluding to?
Yeah. So I had mentioned already that I interviewed him for the movie Mulholland Drive, and this was by far the most memorable movie director interview of my career. In the 2000s, I was more regularly interviewing movie directors. Let's see, Gus Van Sant, Stephen Frears, Sofia Coppola, Danny Boyle, Todd Haynes. But almost every other case, the interview was either over the phone or it was at a hotel room, like a hotel room conference room or something like that. And this interview was different. This was at David Lynch's house. And I had an in with him because I went to NYU and most of my friends were film majors, and they all wanted to become directors, but only one of my friends became a working Hollywood director, Eli Roth, the horror movie director. And so before Eli Roth became a director, he worked for David Lynch for 6 years. And so I was able to kind of play the card of knowing Eli Roth. And so I got this interview with David Lynch at his house for Mulholland Drive. And actually, this is Lost Highway relevant in one way, which is a friend drove me to David Lynch's house in the Hollywood Hills. And the first thing I noticed was I recognized the house. And I was like, this is the Lost Highway house. And so in the movie Lost Highway, when we see Bill Pullman open his door and find this, videotape on his doorstep, that's David Lynch's actual house.
I think they filmed inside it too, didn't they?
Maybe so. I'm not sure about that. I don't remember. But David Lynch owned two houses next door to each other in the Hollywood Hills. And one was his kind of residence and the other was his kind of production company offices and stuff. And so I got there and I was led into this backyard shack. I don't know what to call it. It ended up being his kind of artist studio. Like he's always, he originally studied painting before film and he's always continued to paint and make art. And so I was taken into this kind of single room, standalone building. And I was let in there before he was in there. And it was cool because there were all these paintings that he had done and, like cement floors. And I was like looking at all his paintings. And so he comes in, he's let in by his assistant. And I remember thinking like, oh, wow, he looks just like David Lynch. It's like when you see a celebrity, there's a part of you that's like, oh, wow. He had like the white shirt on buttoned up to the top and he's like, big pompadour hair and he's smoking a cigarette, chain smoking cigarettes the whole time. And so we do the interview and he's very nice. Like he sounds like the opposite kind of person that would make these dark, disturbing movies. Like he sounds like a kind of like a Boy Scout from the 1950s or something like, hey buddy, gee whiz, like good to meet you. And so we do the interview and he had, before we did the interview, he showed me around his studio, like in addition to paintings, there were it was like a workshop. Like he likes to make furniture and chairs and stuff like that. And so like one of the things he showed me was this work sink. He had a sink that was made out of wood, like stained wood, and that was like his work sink. And so he was like really proud of that. And so we do the interview, and I'm talking to him about Mulholland Drive, talking to him about Twin Peaks, and like, you know, maybe a half hour has gone by, 45 minutes, and he says like, "Hey Brian, can I get you to walk out of here onto that pathway, because I got to urinate." And I, you know, we were in this single room building that had no bathroom, and so I dutifully kind of walked out the door and down this garden pathway, and he starts peeing into the sink that he had shown me. Um, and like, you know, there's like a little window above the work sink, and what I had walked through was just like an open doorway. And so he continued to talk to me while he peed, and I could see David Lynch's head like through the little window, and he's like,
That's so awkward.
"Hey, a lot of coffee," you know. And so I realized, I think even then, that I was experiencing a Lynchian moment with David Lynch.
That's so
And so,
cool.
yeah, it was crazy. And so, yeah, I watched David Lynch urinate into a sink.
Did you get to go pee in it after he did? Were you like, can I pee there too? No.
No, I didn't dare. Like he said, like, well, you know, I drink a lot of coffee, as if to explain why he was having to urinate into the sink. And I said, like, oh yeah, my girlfriend drinks tea, and I think that's even makes you pee even more. And he was like, oh really? You know.
And then what did you bring? You brought food, remember?
Yeah. I asked Eli Roth if there was any kind of gift I might bring, and he's like, yes. You got to bring him a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts. He loves donuts. And so when I arrived, I had like this box of Krispy Kreme donuts with me. I remember picking them up because a friend and I stopped at Krispy Kreme on the way, and it was like only 2 or 3 weeks after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And so there was like signs all over America at the time that said like, God bless America, or like support the troops, or, you know, flag waving and all that shit. And I remember there was this car wash that had like a changeable marquee, and it had supposed to have said God bless America, but the B had fallen off. And so it said God bless America. You know, it's like the thing about David Lynch's movies, I think that is great also, is when you watch those movies, you start to see the regular world in a kind of Lynchian way, or through that kind of lens. So that too felt like, oh man, I'm going to interview David Lynch, and it says God bless America. But so I get the Krispy Kreme donuts, and I took them, and you know, he thanked me for bringing them, and like, you know, maybe 45 minutes had gone by, and he had never had a donut, and I was actually really hungry because I had like never had lunch or anything. And so I totally wouldn't do this now, but I was like, you know, in my 20s, and we're nearly done with the interview, and I said like, hey, so what do you think? Should we tuck into these donuts? And he's like, he said something I didn't understand. He says like, oh no, I can't, because I'm on this new lunch. I later learned that he has the exact same thing for lunch every day. Like every few years, he'll change up what that lunch is. Like for a while, he would go to Bob's Big Boy every day, every single day. And then he started having like a healthier lunch. Like I think I saw him on Charlie Rose, and he said that he eats like, you know, tuna and tomatoes and olives, or something like that. But, you know, he was basically saying like he eats this lunch every day, and that he didn't want to spoil his lunch. And so he didn't want to have a donut. And then this is the part I really wouldn't do now, but I said like, well, do you mind if I have one? And I remember in his kind of David Lynch Boy Scout voice, he goes like, not one bit, Buster, you dig in.
Oh, that's sweet. That's really sweet.
So I'm just like eating this Krispy Kreme donut in front of him, like, well, he doesn't have one, and I'm like asking him like about Twin Peaks or whatever.
That's the best. What a good story. Did you, when asking him questions and interviewing him stuff, was there anything that he revealed to you that you were kind of surprised about his work, his, you know, all his movies?
I feel thankful in retrospect because, you know, when he doesn't like it when people just sort of ask him point blank, like, what does this mean? Like if we were interviewing him about Lost Highway, and we'd say like, what does this mean? Like, there's no way he would tell us. But I sort of asked him about what he thinks about other people not understanding or interpreting in their own ways. And what we really talked about, it's kind of interesting, like what we talked about more than his movies was we talked about his idea generation. And if you've ever heard or listened to a David Lynch interview, you know he loves to talk about this stuff. Like he even wrote an entire book a few years after I interviewed him called Catching the Big Fish. And he really loves to talk about his process of idea generation. Like he's really into transcendental meditation, and he really believes wholeheartedly that his creative process is anchored by basically just sitting in a chair and being really quiet and thinking and taking the time for ideas to come. And so I was curious about, you know, where this creativity came from, and we talked about that. And I wanted to ask him about his roots in the Pacific Northwest and then going to the East Coast, like to Philadelphia, because that had been my own journey as well. Like I felt like I shared something in common with him. Like he came from originally like Spokane, Washington, and I think Montana as well, and eventually made his way to like Washington D.C. and Philadelphia, and it was clear, and I wanted to ask him a little bit about how the process of going from like small town Pacific Northwest to the East Coast and these urban centers really kind of, you know, scared him and overwhelmed him and gave him a lot of culture shock. But then that also became kind of fodder for his art. Like Eraserhead is, especially, he's talked about how that was like, in his words, like the Philadelphia of my mind. And he was in like 1970s Philadelphia, which was really harsh. And so I think, you know, I wanted to ask him about that because I had gone from small town Oregon to New York City. And so he talked about Philadelphia and that whole artistic journey. And so I think I was kind of asking him, I probably should have asked him more questions about the movie. And I just kind of wanted to, I felt like I was having an audience with a kind of guru more than I was saying, hey, you know, tell me about Blue Velvet, you know?
Sure.
And so I think I recognized that he's such a unique character. Like even among famous movie directors, like he really marched to his own drummer. And I think there are other directors that were famous at the time or acclaimed in some of those years as well, like, you know, Martin Scorsese or whoever. And I think David Lynch was really kind of an outlier even among those famous directors. Like I think there are a lot of great films by people we might have called auteurs where you still basically kind of understand what they're doing, what the stories are about. And you know, that I think like that will always be the DNA and the identity of David Lynch is people going, what the hell did that mean? In a way, like what you guys were talking about, like that is the signature response to a David Lynch film.
Batshit crazy. That's the signature response.
So this was, I guess, the guy that played Eraserhead. This was his last movie, and he died before it came out. He was like murdered in a parking lot or something.
In a donut shop.
At a donut shop. That's so sad.
Yeah.
And it's Richard Pryor's last movie too.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy that Richard Pryor is in this?
Yeah, I think we have a photo there, Bill. There it is. And it was also Robert Blake's last movie before all of his turmoil.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's crazy. Like, I remember when I studied film a little bit at NYU, like one of my teachers using this term, intertextuality, which is like a big, you know, $5 word or whatever. But what it means is that sometimes when you watch a movie and you see certain characters, like you carry with you your memory of the other movies that they've been in or what's happened in their real life. And so it's weird to watch Lost Highway with Robert Blake as this kind of quintessentially mysterious, foreboding, supernatural character and know that that he would basically become a murderer himself.
Yeah. We did Electric Light and Blue a few weeks back, where he's like the most charming, likable character ever. And then to see him play something like this and to see how he ended his life is it's quite a change. And he was so creepy in this movie.
Yeah, he's the best part in a way, I think.
Yeah, he was great. Anything else to add we want to talk about with this one?
I think we should talk about Handling the Undead, the action-packed movie that Ian picked.
I think for the very same reasons that we like this last one are the same reasons to like this one. I think it's a little more linear. You can kind of tell what's happening, but I think there's also a lot more going on here than Bill might think. I chose this movie because next week is the Oscars, and this was my favorite film from 2024. For me, Handling the Undead is one of the most beautiful, most moving films I have ever seen. Like, it's just, I'm not a big crier, but I was bawling when watching this movie. And Bill's like, what? They were too. It's so sad. It has a horror element. So horror film people hate it. They think, oh, it's so boring. Nothing happens. So they agree with Bill, the comedy guy, that nothing happens. But it was so rich to me. Just all these about these three families dealing with the loss of three different family members, and something happens, and the dead start coming back to these families, and it's basically like, if you lost your family member, what would it really be like if they did come back, and would they be the same? And I think this movie is basically teaching us to understand that death is a part of life, and you gotta. Bill's like, what are you talking about? No, but it's like, death is a part of life, and you should take what you have when you have it. And I don't know, for me, this is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. What do you think, Brian?
Well, I was prepared to really dislike this movie, and I did not dislike it. I think what I was doing is that I have zombie movie fatigue. Like, zombies
Sure.
become such a kind of genre into themselves. Like, there's so many zombie movies, and we could have a separate conversation about what it is in our zeitgeist, that is prompting all these zombie movies and TV shows and that sort of thing. And I started to realize when I was watching this movie that it wasn't like the others, and that it was kind of like an art film more than it was a zombie movie. This was not very much not Night of the Living Dead or that kind of thing. And so really it started to strike me as a movie about grieving. These I feel so bad for these characters who kind of experience the death of a loved one twice. Lose someone, and then their loved one is brought back, and then it slowly starts to dawn on these people that, like, this might be my mom's body, but it's not my mom.
Yeah.
It was a heartbreaking movie, but artfully done, and it was a kind of languid pace. That was a way in which it also kind of upended the genre it was presumed to have come from. It really was like a kind of a film more than a horror movie.
I actually,
sorry. Oh no, Bill.
Is it me? Do you
What's
hear
that?
that?
Oh, the sound disturbance?
Yeah.
Oh, is it you?
Yeah. All right, I'll come right
It's not
back.
so bad.
I'll come right back.
Bye, Bill. So I'll show, while Bill has jumped out for a minute, I'll just throw the trailer on for a second. Or not the trailer, I threw together a clip, which this film, I have to say, is very hard to choose a clip for, because like you said, it's got a different kind of pace. But I threw this together so people get an idea of what this film is. Here is a clip.
Eva, og vi vet ikke helt hvordan det har skjedd. Men hjertet hennes har startet igjen uten at de har gjort noe tiltak.
It's so heartbreaking. I think, as people say, it's paced. People say it's a slow burn. Oh, nothing happens. But so much is happening in the performer's eyes. There's so much going on. You observe the actors going through these emotions. So for me, I'm like, it was riveting. I can go on forever about this movie because I adore this movie. Bill, what did you think of what you saw? Of
Where
this
did
film?
you find this movie?
I'd read the book by what's his name? John Lindquist. John, he did Let the Right One In. I don't know if you know that book from a
Yeah.
few years back. And then there was a movie. And this
Yeah.
film is directed by Tia Hvistendahl. So I had pursued this movie and it wasn't coming out. It didn't do well. And then it came to streaming, which it is now on Hulu. And I finally watched it and was just blown away by it.
Oh, I was
Bill,
blown away by it. I was blown away by it as well.
You didn't finish it.
It should be called watching paint dry.
But that's pretty paint, really pretty paint with nice music, excellent acting.
Yeah, it's brutal, buddy. It's brutal.
How far did you get?
So I watched the movie called Failure to Watch in the theater, and at the end I said I could have just stared at a screen for 2 hours and had the same reaction. And this is the same reaction. I could just stare at my TV for an hour. It's beautiful looking.
How do you know? It's so moving. You weren't moved by it at all? Like we've all gone through loss, you know.
Yeah, but it didn't really make sense.
Well, did you make it to the end? Like, there is something that is a little bit funny that starts to happen at the very end of the movie, where all of a sudden, like, these zombies who have been just sort of like staring into space and not saying anything, like all of a sudden kind of start to get hungry a little bit, and you know, like then it starts to some degree turn into the horror movie you might have been expecting all along. Like one of the characters gets killed, you know, and so like there is like a kind of chomp on somebody's neck, and so I think slow burn is a good way of putting it. Like I think I said earlier, it's more like an art film than a horror movie, but it is still a horror movie, like a horror movie that is, instead of rapids, like a slow moving lake or something. But it is still a horror movie.
Sure. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like the film between the zombie outbreak and then when they start really eating people. It's like the moments just before. But how it would be if maybe it really happened. Do we really want them to come back?
Or if you want to see your neighbor's vacation photos, that's what.
Way to get. But I do have to know, Bill, how far did you get?
An hour in.
All right, you only had a half hour left. It's short.
It felt like 4 hours, dude.
Thank you for trying, Brian. Thank you for liking it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I would never choose to watch this, but sometimes we do get locked into our own tastes in a certain way. Like, it was a good exercise for me to kind of be required to watch a movie of somebody else's choice, because like I do think like after I stopped reviewing movies, I really wanted to regain my own sense of choice, and I remember kind of resolving that I was no longer going to try and keep up with what the the most acclaimed movies were, and like I wasn't going to make sure I watched every Oscar nominee for Best Picture or whatever the case is. Like I just thought, like I'm just going to give myself license to not have seen everything, and I'm going to go watch like the movies I love over and over again, or and so this kind of reminded me, watching Handling on the Undead reminded me of what it was like back when I was a movie critic, and how when it's not all about your own choice, like, and you get out of your own head, like sometimes you do end up seeing some merit in something that you wouldn't have chosen to watch as a viewer.
Precisely.
Very smart. This is why we have him on the show. I just make bad jokes. This is why we have Brian Libby on the show. This
Brian,
is
you saved the
discussions.
You will open Bill's mind.
Yes, I agree. This is why we have him on. All right, let me talk about my pick.
What is your pick, Bill?
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey from 1990. 91. It was a total bomb when it came out. It's a sequel to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's the same writers. It's a different director. The great Stephen Herrick directed the first one. Peter Hewitt directed the second one. I think he's a British guy. Tonally very different than the first one. Shot differently as well. Totally. I mean, people were just like so bummed out when this movie came out. It didn't do well at all. And then it had a cult following on video, and it I don't know how I would describe it. It's the narrative is not as complex as the first one, but it involves Bill and Ted dying and having to go through death in order to save the world again. I won't spoil the ending, but it's so inventive. It's so smart. Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, they broke up. The last movie they wrote together was Mom and Dad Save the World, which was just besieged with problems. I think the movie was like 82 minutes long. They just edited that out. And then Ed became a pretty big A-list writer in Hollywood in the 90s and 2000s. And then Chris Matheson, he worked on 3 O'Clock High, which will be the Ejectable. That's one of the best movies of the 80s. And then he had a hand in Mr. Wrong, which is such a crazy movie that it's hard to ignore all the jokes. They're so funny in that movie.
Was that Bill Pullman?
Yeah, he's hilarious in that movie. But yeah, Bill and Ted. Here's a scene with William Sadler. He plays the Grim Reaper. He's hilarious in it. I don't know why he's German. Is that a riff on a Bergman movie? Is that what's going on?
Seventh Seal, right?
Yeah,
The Seventh Seal.
Yeah. You can't think
there's a Seventh Seal reference in a Ryan movie. It's crazy. like so nuts.
Play the trailer. Play the scene. Yeah.
Let's play the scene. I forgot.
Dude, this is a totally deep hole. Yeah. Now what? I don't know. Hey, you want to play 20 questions? Okay.
It's my favorite scene in the movie.
I mean, to think about all these practical effects, you know, I'd rather watch this than any Marvel movie with the CGIs. It's more inventive. Mm-hmm. It's totally ahead of its time. I can see why it bombed. The shots, you know, Stephen Herrick was such a great visualist, and Peter Hewitt has shots that are all like, I don't know, it feels like a Tim Burton movie a little bit, and this movie's missing George Carlin from it. He might make a surprise near the end, but without him, it doesn't feel like a total Bill and Ted movie. Pam Grier is amazing in it as well. I forgot how awesome she is. And the two princesses from the first movie, somehow they couldn't come back, you know? So that was a little awkward, but highly recommended. Kino Lorber has a 4K. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like stunning, the transfer. So what do you guys think, Brian?
I have one thought about this, which is I actually see a bit of a connecting thread between our 3 movies that we're talking about. Like, to me, this is going to sound like bullshit in a way, but to me, they're all kind of about selfhood, you might say. Lost Highway has these 2 halves of one character, and Handling the Undead, you have these people who have lost their lives and come back as zombies, and like, are they or are they really not these people? Like, they're kind of devoid of their original personalities, and so, you know, you have the body that's reanimated, but the personalities aren't there. And this movie, you know, Bill and Ted, like, it starts in the future, and they have to kind of go back and save themselves, and they die, and they make a deal with the Grim Reaper to be granted life so they can fight these other 2 characters who are like robots impersonating them. And so, like, all 3 of these movies in some different way really kind of grapple with what it means to be yourself, like whether you've died or whether you're your body is there, but not your personality. And so I had a great time watching this movie. I know I must have seen it when it came out, but I don't. It's a little bit foggy just because I'm old. But I had a great time. Like I think Bill and I agreed in a message before the taping of this that Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey has a little bit of the tone of like a Looney Tunes cartoon, and there is even a kind of Looney Tunes reference at the end of the movie where a bad guy fires a gun that he thinks is going to kill Bill and Ted, and instead like a little flag pops out of the gun that says "bang." That's right out of Looney Tunes. And so like I also love Keanu Reeves, and I'm a big fan of the John Wick movies, and I really got a kick out of the fact that Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey was actually made the same year as one of my top 5 all-time favorite movies, which also stars Keanu Reeves, which is My Own Private Idaho. And so
I thought you said Point Break.
No. Well, I mean, I really enjoy Point Break as well, like 100% pure adrenaline and all that stuff. But my partner and I both love early Gus Van Sant movies that were all filmed in Portland, and we're big fans of the movie My Own Private Idaho with Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix. And so it was just crazy to me that he literally made Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and My Own Private Idaho, as well as Point Break, all within basically one calendar year, because they couldn't be more different in a way. But then too, I thought like, there's actually a similarity between My Own Private Idaho and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and that they both involved like Keanu Reeves as part of this duo with like a shorter blonde guy, going on this kind of journey of one sort or another, you might say. Granted, there's like, a lot of homosexual love in My Own Private Idaho that there isn't in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. But, I just thought this movie was fun. It's absurd. And I didn't go back and watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure again, but I felt like the writing was smart and self-aware, and it becomes a kind of trio with Bill and Ted and the Grim Reaper, and that was really fun. Like the fact that they have to play a game, like they have to have a contest with the Grim Reaper to save their lives, and they play Battleship, and then like he demands like best 2 out of 3, and they're playing like Twister. I've laughed so many times about like Bill being in a game of Twister with the Grim Reaper, and like Grim Reaper split like stuck in Bill's face, and going like, oh dude. So I just like I had a blast. I would just like, it was just fun.
Ian, I totally agree with you. I didn't like the original, the first one, when it came out in its day. I was just like, it was just so light and so dumb, I thought at the time. So when this one came out, it was slight. Well, actually, that's how I felt about the first one. Like, oh, that was kind of cute, but maybe I was too old. I don't know. And when this came out, I had low expectations, but I'm like, it's a movie, so I'm going to go see it. So I went. I loved this movie when it came out. Loved it. Because it is I think it's much smarter than the first one. It is so absurd. It is quirky. It's unpredictable. Of course, there'll be a happy ending. We know that. Not to say there is one, because they do die. But it's just so much fun. Winter and Reeves are having the best time. They are the movie. They are the movie. And there's all like that, the falling scene that we just showed. It's just so funny and goofy. And there's just a million great set pieces in this film. I can't recommend it enough. It's no handling the undead, but it's cuter.
Not as funny as handling the undead.
Yeah, it's not as funny as that.
Yeah.
Keanu and Alex Winter were friends in real life, I think, even before Bill and Ted, and that's part of what you feel is like the chemistry between those two.
Totally, they're having so much fun. And I thought this was number 2 after Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So I thought it did okay, no? Or did it just bomb?
No, it bombed. Ryan went out of business like a year or 2 later. They had to sell
this movie was ahead of its time. My son said this, because I made him watch this, and he loved it. And he said it's a 2000s comedy before the 2000s. So I think if it came out 10 years later, people would have loved it.
I agree. I think they didn't know what to make.
Yeah. And I guess it wasn't going to be called Bill and Ted Go to Hell, but then I guess they were uncomfortable using the word hell.
That would have been so much better.
Yeah. Whatever.
All right,
So
so we're at the point. Brian, you have to pick a movie you like best. You can't pick your own.
Among these three,
Yeah.
oh, Bill and Ted. No offense to Handling the Undead, because I love that you love it, and it was absolutely better than I expected. And it defied my kind of expectations for what a cliche zombie movies are, and so I absolutely give you kudos for introducing me to a movie that wasn't the cliche I thought it would be, and that was better than I thought it would be. And so I would give a thumbs up to Handling the Undead. But I just had a lot of fun watching Bill and Ted. Like, I could watch it numerous times, and it's there's an element of nostalgia as well. Like, I was 19 years old in 1991, and I'm not gonna lie, like, a lot of my cultural favorites come from a period between like 1979 and 1993 or so. And so, this brought me back, like, I'm from the West Coast, and my friends and I were throwing around a lot of dudes, and and I think, like, Keanu Reeves, this is part of a kind of a quite impressive group of both highbrow and lowbrow movies that he was part of. He was in this period of years, like, he was doing like everything from like Dangerous Liaisons and the aforementioned My Own Private Idaho, kind of prestige films of one kind or another, to movies like Bill and Ted and Point Break, and
I Love You to Death.
Yeah.
I love you too, Bill. Oh.
Yeah, I love that movie actually too. Like, my girlfriend and I often recite movies from lines from I Love You to Death. Like,
really?
Yeah, like,
It's
like when Keanu Reeves and William Hurt have been contracted to murder Kevin Kline's character, and they're standing in his bedroom above him with like a baseball bat, and they're supposed to like club him to death with a baseball bat, and they notice that it's like a Reggie Jackson brand baseball bat, and they're like, they go off on this whole tangent of like, I wonder how many home runs he hit, and it cuts to the people downstairs waiting for the murder to take place, and the people downstairs just start hearing this soft chant of like, Reggie, 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 so so I Love You to Death, absolutely, that one too. And so I get a kick out of Keanu Reeves, and I think, like, there was a time, maybe a long time, where he was kind of thought of as almost like a joke a little bit, like like a comically bad actor, as if like like the kind of dude in Point Break or Bill and Ted was like his real personality, and like, but he was also in like a Kenneth Branagh Shakespeare movie around this time.
Much Ado About Nothing. I love that movie.
And so I think he has his limitations as an actor, but I think he's a really intelligent guy and a really generous guy. And so that kind of comes through in his characters on screen. Like, you hear stories about him sharing like a portion of his John Wick salary with like the crew who are making, terrible money or not very good money. And like, I think Keanu Reeves is just like a really good guy in a world that isn't necessarily full of them in Hollywood. And so I would pick Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey just because I had a fun time.
Awesome. Ian?
And I respect that, because I'm going to choose the same. It's a movie I loved growing up. Lost Highway, I appreciate a lot more. So thank you for making me watch it again. No, I do appreciate it a lot more than I did back then. It's a beautiful film to look at. And I would say for a David Lynch film, because I'm not a huge fan, I respect the dude, and rest in peace. But it's a stunning looking film, so I respect it. But Bill and Ted's is so much fun, and since I can't choose my own, it's Bogus Journey.
And I will choose Lost Highway because I don't like to watch movies that are like watching paint dry. So I get the Employee of the Month Akeem for outstanding performance on effort.
Congrats, Bill. You deserve it for a change.
Thank you. I never win.
This movie's
Brian.
not Slate.
I never win. Ever. I never win. Well, Brian, thanks for coming. Make sure to like, subscribe, and we'll see you again.
Sounds great. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Pop the popcorn, grab a Coke, and find that old VHS. We're diving deep in cheesy flicks. Yeah, we're on a vintage quest. Low reviews but high on laughs. Let's give these films a cheer.